Good evening and welcome to WanaxTV. In this episode, we talk about a rather obscure individual from the Linear B tablets. We're talking about Enkhelyawon of Pilos. Before we begin, I'd like to thank to everybody joining us
Good
live.
evening
I know
and
it's
welcome to
late night,
WanaxTV.
so
In this
not many of
episode,
you
we talk
will be
about
here.
a rather obscure
I'd like to thank to all of
from
the
the
channel
Linear B
subscribers,
We're
YouTube
talking
members,
about
and
Enkhelyawon
Patreons
of Pilos.
Before we begin, I'd like to
we were
thank to everybody
supposed
joining
to
us live.
have
I know
an
it's late night,
episode
so
of the
not
Mycenaean
many of
history
you
will be
about
here
today,
and
I'd like to thank
reason
all of
we're
the
not
channel
hearing it right now
subscribers
is
we're
YouTube
talking
members
about
it's too late.
Enkhelyawon
I
of
have done
Pilos.
preparation for the
Before
episode,
we
which
begin,
I will
I'd
show
like to
you. We were
thank to everybody
supposed
joining us
to
live. I
have
know
an
it's late
episode
night,
of
so
the
not
Mycenaean
many of
history
you already
will be
about
here
today,
and
I'd like to
reason
thank all
we're
of
not
the channel
hearing it right now I have
subscribers
finished
we're
too
talking
late.
about
It's too late.
Enkhelyawon
I
of
have done
Pilos.
preparation for the
Before we
episode.
begin,
We were supposed to have an
welcome to
episode of the Mycenaean history
already
and like the reason all of the channel I have finished way before tomorrow. I have done preparation for the episode. We were supposed to have an episode of the Mycenaean history and like the reason all of the channel I have finished way before I have done preparation for the episode. We were supposed to have an episode of the Mycenaean history and like the reason all of the channel I have finished way before I have done preparation for the episode. We were supposed to have an episode of the Mycenaean history and like the reason all of the I have finished way before I have done preparation for the episode. We were supposed to have an episode of the Mycenaean history.
Second. All right. So he appears in the Linear B tablets with no title of Wanax, no title of Lavagetas. And Scholar T has been debating on who the individual was. As you can see on the screen right now, this is the Linear B inscription that we're talking about, the Linear B letters. It's letters Enkhelyawon, which is considered by the scholars to be Enkhelyawon. This is not 100% pronunciation of his name, of course. It could be Ankilawan, could be anything similar to that. But from the inscription, which dates to perhaps the golden era of the Mycenaean Greece, 13th century BC, we have a description of what he owns. He's an owner of great estates, good farmland, 1,000 grape vines, 1,000 fig trees, and 40 men serving as rowers in the fleet. Before we proceed, let's see what everybody's saying at the moment. Ravens That Fly with the Nightmare Eyes says, wanted someone to do a video about this king a long time. Well, it's very questionable if he is a king or he is just a wealthy individual. I have a list of Mycenaean ranks and titles prepared, so we'll dive into that in a moment. Costa says, terrible echoing. Please let me know if this has been fixed. I noticed that that I had an echo in the background. Please let me know if I have eliminated the echo. So hopefully the echo has been eliminated. If somebody can confirm that, that would be awesome. So I guess back to the beginning. Today we are talking about Enkhelyawon, an individual mentioned in the Linear B records dating back to the 13th century BC, the Mycenaean city of Pylos, one of the wealthiest palace centers of the Mycenaean Greece, and not often we have individuals mentioned by name in the Linear B records. So I have a confirmation that the echo has been fixed now. That's great. That's great. Perfect. So the original plan for today was to go with the live episode on the Mycenaean Hittite conflicts in the late Bronze Age, something that we have been voting for on the YouTube community page. And I have just completed the contents and preparation for the episode, and it's past 8 p.m. here right now on the East Coast. So that's the reason we're not going with such a big episode right now. And that episode is, as you can see, contents right now. So as you can see, the contents of the episode right now, that's going to be the next live episode that we're going to do, Mycenaean Hittite conflicts. It would be a shame if I went with it right now at almost 9 p.m. here Eastern time, and I know that it's early morning in Greece, early morning hours, so a lot of people would not be able to make it to watch this live. So we're going to leave that for either tomorrow or someday during the coming week. As you can see, we have a huge topic on the hands. We have the background of the Hittite Mycenaean conflict, where we're going to mention the Mycenaean takeover of Crete. We're going to mention the Hittite takeover of the Asuwa League, and then the conflicts themselves, the indictment of Maduwata, the appearance of Atarsia of Achaia, and the war against the Hittites in western Anatolia, the weakening of the Hittite state, and then the restoration of the Hittite Empire under Shuppiluliuma I, eventual fall of Arzawa, the Ahhiyawa letter, which is a little known letter sent by the Mycenaean king to the Hittite counterpart regarding a territorial dispute over a number of islands of the western Anatolian coast, and then the first conflict over Wilusa, where we have the first mention of Piamaradu, then Alexander Treaty. Many of you have heard of Alexander of Wilusa, the king that made a treaty with the Hittite ruler, where Wilusa was essentially a vassal kingdom of the Hittites. Then we talk about Piamaradu himself, whose activities have spanned throughout the reigns of no less than 4 Hittite kings, at least 3, but very likely 4 if we include Tudhalia IV in the second half of the century. The Milawata letter, the weakening of the Mycenaean influence in western Anatolia, and then the Hittite contacts, the possible Hittite presence in the Trojan War. We'll touch on that too, and finish off with the Bronze Age collapse, the collapse of the Hittite Empire, the collapse of the Mycenaean Greece. So that's something that I have prepared for the next live episode. It will be great. It's going to be at least, it will be over 1 hour for sure. It will likely be about 2 hours long. There's a lot to talk about there. So because this is a late night episode, it's going to be more casual. So we're talking about a rather obscure topic from late Bronze Age, from the Mycenaean Linear B records, from the city of Pilos, about a person named Enkhelyawon. Was he a king? Was he a nobleman? Was he a prince? Who was this person? This that you see on the screen right now, it's not an actual depiction of Enkhelyawon. This is a WanaxTV edit of one of the very known frescoes of the Mycenaean Greece. We edited it a little bit, and that's going to be our Enkhelyawon depiction for today. So as we can see, this Enkhelyawon, as he appears in Linear B records, owned great estates, as it is said, good farmland, 1,000 grape vines, 1,000 fig trees, and he had 40 men serving as rowers in the fleet. So he was considerably wealthy, very rich for the time. Perhaps a Crassus, a Mycenaean version of Crassus. And but was he a king? Is this wealth right here enough for him to be a king in Mycenaean Greece? We know that the title of Wanax, a king, or some scholars consider him to be consider this to be a title of a high king, because we do not know the exact structure of the Mycenaean Greece in the late Bronze Age. Was it a confederation of some sort, a league, a classical style league like an Achaean league, Aetolian league, Delian league, League of Corinth? Was Mycenaean Greece style in that way? And only when we answer those questions, which we are having difficulties with at the moment due to the lack of available information when it comes to the Linear B records, they are not depicting the political structure of the time, just dealing with the administrative records. So unfortunately, we are not yet able to answer, was it a unitary state? Was it a kingdom under one single great king that rules over everybody? Was it some sort of a league or a confederation headed by a sort of a hegemon, presumably from Mycenae? We do not know that for 100%. We do know that some sort of organization existed. We do know that by the lack of this records of destructive wars among the cities, the palace centers of the Mycenaean Greece. We do know that Tiryns was one of the major palatial centers in late Bronze Age Greece. We know that Tiryns was very close to Mycenae, a walking distance from Mycenae, basically. And throughout the late Bronze Age, there were no wars between Mycenae and Tiryns, indicating that they belonged to the single polity. Same goes for other palatial centers in Greece. Same goes, especially the minor ones, such as Sparta and Laconia. It was a very small, perhaps not a palatial center, perhaps a provincial, regional center. Other centers in Argolis as well. Athens. Athens was a palatial center, but rather a minor palatial center. Thebes, Pylos. There was no records of wars between these polities, no archaeological records, no Linear B records. And if we take in account the road network, the architectural achievements of the Mycenaeans, the drainage of the Kopais Lake, the existence of the settlement of Gla in Boeotia, it is very possible that Mycenaean Greece was some sort of confederation or some sort of polity that had one person who was above others, whether he was a classical Bronze Age king, as there is as in the Hittite Empire, when he is unquestionable lord of everybody else, whether each palatial center had its own little dynasty that only had the Mycenaean king as an overlord. We do not know that, but we do know that we can with a high degree of certainty we can say that Mycenaean Greece was not a fragmented bunch of city-states as it was in the classical period. So we did not have city-states constantly waging war against one another. We had some kind of confederation, a league or a polity headed by an individual who was considered to be equal in power to the king of the Hittites. With that being said, was Enkhelyawon that person? It is. Let's see what everybody thinks. I believe that. What is his transliteration in classical Greek? Zippis asks. That's a good question. There is no exact transliteration to classical Greek as I'm aware of. If you mean like the Tabagalava letter, where Tabagalava or Eteokaleves is transliterated to Eteocles in classical Greek. I don't believe that we have such case for Enkhelyawon, but my personal guess would be something like Enkhelyawon or Ekhelyawon. That would be the closest based on uh, based on the structure alone. But I am no linguistic expert, so it's an open question. So while attempting to answer what was the rank of this individual within the Mycenaean Greek world, it is very unlikely that he would be Wanax ruling in Mycenae or even Pylos. If Pylos had its own Wanax, I don't think that it is very likely that Enkhelyawon would be the king of Pylos. The reason for that is that good farmland, 1,000 grape vines, 1,000 fig trees, and 40 men serving as rowers in the fleet is not. It is. It is. It shows that you are wealthy, but it doesn't show that you are the most powerful person in one of the most powerful palatial centers in the Mycenaean Greece. It does not show that. If you take into account the amount of the size of armies that each palatial center could muster, which we know that it is about 500 chariots for the city of Knossos, several hundred chariots for the city of Pilos, which probably means thousands of infantry. 40 men in fleet is nothing compared to that. And I do not think that King Wanax would be writing down that he has 40 men serving in the fleet. I just don't believe that to be the case. With that being said, let's open up the Mycenaean ranks. Vin Russo says, I don't think he was a king. I agree. I think that he was probably a wealthy landowner, perhaps a member of aristocracy, perhaps an equite, a telestai. The problem is that we don't have clear explanations for these Mycenaean titles either. All of those titles that are below 1x, we do not have clear explanations of the limits of their power of their purpose actually. But let's go one by one. So we have 1x at the top of the society, who is a king, whether there was only one 1x in the Mycenaean Greece seated in Mycenae that ruled over everybody as a high king, or each palatial center had its own 1x. We do not know that, but either way, 1x is the number one person in the Mycenaean society in general, which translates to the king. We have Lavagetas, which is not clearly explained to us from the Linear B records. It roughly translates to the leader of the people, meaning either a military commander or a highly ranked chieftain, more than likely, actually almost certainly, second in rank after 1x. The reason we know that is because he has whether he was possibly a crown prince, that's another possibility, but the fact that he's a number 2 person in Mycenaean Greece below 1x, we do know that because of the land that he owns, which is size approximately 1/3 of the land that Wanax owns. And, excuse me, sorry. And he also has his own temenos, or sacred land. Only Wanax and Lavagetas have their own temenos, which is a sacred land, sacred space dedicated to the king himself, and it is also dedicated to Lavagetas. He has his own temenos, which means that he's either a crown prince or definitely a member of the royal family, and second in command, second by rank below Wanax. Maybe he was a Basileus. That's a possibility. That's a possibility. But we'll get to Basileus in a second. So below Lavagetas, we have Equites or Hequetas. These are the royal companions of the Wanax, basically Mycenaean aristocracy. And below that, actually not below them, we have Basileus or Quasi-Reus, an undetermined title which simply means chief or chieftain or leader without any special context given in the Linear B records. We do know that in one of the inscriptions he is mentioned as overseeing a group of bronze smiths or something similar to that, and in that context Basileus simply means chief or leader. Eventually this chieftain or leader would be a local king, as we know by the Homeric times, as Homer remembers the Mycenaean Greece, which is Homer lived several centuries after the Mycenaean collapse. Actually, not Homer. The Iliad and the Odyssey were written at that time. Whether Homer was a single person or not, there's a whole another debate on that. But by the time of the late Bronze Age, by the time of the end of the Bronze Age, Basileus was a local king and Wanax was the high king, as we know from the Trojan War, from the Iliad and the Odyssey. Was Basileus a local king early on in the late Bronze Age, early on in the Mycenaean Greece? Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. We do know that he was a chieftain, a leader, whether he was a local chieftain, whether he was a chieftain of a particular palatial center. It's possible. We unfortunately do not know that just based on the Linear B records alone. And then we have the local and provincial titles right here. We have Corete or Coreter or Coretes, who is a a regional district governor. Each palatial center it consisted of several districts, and Coreter or Coretes was a governor of a region or a district, and Porocorete or Procoretes was his deputy. Then we also have Telestai or Telestas, also not very well defined position based on the available records. It is presumed that this means a landowner, wealthy landowner, whether Telestai were also members of aristocracy or not, or just merely landowners, which do not necessarily transition to the royal companions of the Wanax. We do not know that. We have Damokoros, a local community leader, the leader of Damos, and Damos means the people. And we also have another title, which is a key bearer. It is Karaviporos. This means a key bearer, but it is also ill-defined based on what we have in Linear B. Supposedly, this title could have been held by women as well. So there's a religious connotation, possible religious connotation to it too. We do not know, but these are the titles, the ranks that we have in the Linear B records of the Mycenaean society. And when it comes to Enkhelyawon, to me, it doesn't look like he was the Wanax, as some of the scholars have hypothesized. Some of them do not agree with this. They have him as a local nobleman, a regional ruler, or a regional nobleman, or simply a powerful, wealthy man from Pylos. Hal Porter, sounds like the next episode will also be interesting. Well, definitely so. Definitely so. It will be about the Mycenaean Hittite conflicts in the late Bronze Age, starting from the 15th century BC and going all the way to the Bronze Age collapse in the 12th century. Basileus became the word for king and the root of the modern Greek word for king. That is correct. We do know that the title of Basileus was sort of a minor king by the end of the Bronze Age, and it is really in the Greek Dark Ages when the Mycenaean society was gone. It collapsed, and we were left with fragmented communities across Greece with no written records, only oral tradition, small communities, no big trade, no wealth. We do know that at those times, which is from 1200 BC to 800 BC, during those times it were the local leaders who had all the power in their hands, backed by the aristocracy, of course, and those leaders of their communities were called basileos. That was their title, and as such, they evolved into kings of their respective city-states or petty kingdoms or tribal areas, tribal kingdoms, as we have in Epirus and Macedon. By the time of the Archaic period, by the time of 800 BC, we have Basileus as meaning king. Vin Russo, Basileus king, Wanax king of kings. Well, I would say it's sort of like that, but not entirely, because Mycenaean Greece is not as big as to warrant somebody holding a title of King of Kings, I guess solely for that reason, if nothing else. I would say a high king or an overlord would be more correct designation, more correct rank of Wanax, somebody who could be equivalent or equal in status to the king of the Hittites, for example, the king of the Mitanni, the king of Assyria, or possibly the Pharaoh of Egypt. Well, certainly, Pharaoh of Egypt at times regarded king of Alatia on Cyprus as his brother or his equal in royal standing. He also regarded the king of Arzawa as his equal, so he would have regarded the king of the Ahiawa as well if Egypt was any more engaged with Mycenaean Greece that they were, and that was not really much. Mycenaeans were at the edge of the known world to the Egyptians and not very relevant to the Egyptian affairs beyond perhaps trade. So with that being said, the city of Pilos, the palace center of Pilos, best known from the Iliad as the realm of Nestor, son of Neros, the wise king who lived very long. He was advisor to Agamemnon in his Trojan campaign in the Trojan War. And we do have the Palace of Nestor, the archaeological site of the Palace of Nestor, so-called Palace of Nestor, which would have been a very monumental palace. Pylos was second in size in all of the Mycenaean Greece. Certainly the continental Greece, Pylos was the second largest palatial center behind Mycenae itself. Perhaps behind Knossos after the Mycenaean takeover of Knossos. It is not easy to compare um, sizes of the two respective palace centers because the only thing we have is ruins after thousands of years. But we do know that Knossos was able to muster larger fleet of chariots than Pylos. So perhaps Knossos was a little larger than Pylos. We do not know, but nevertheless, Pylos was wealthy. It was a trading hub, and it was a high population center within the Mycenaean Greece. So for Enkhelyawon to be, even if he was not a Wanax, even if he was a member of the Equites, even if he was a Basileus or a Telestas, for him to have 40 men in the fleet, for him to have to own great estates, thousands of fig trees, thousands of thousand of fig trees, 1,000 of olive trees. It's still an accomplishment, and he was one of the rare individuals that we know by name from the Linear B records. Perhaps in one of these episodes, we could talk about some other individuals mentioned from the Linear B records. So as for the plans for the upcoming content on the channel, we have Mycenaean Hittite conflicts coming up this week, either tomorrow or the upcoming week, either tomorrow or one of the next few days. When it comes to the regular WanaxTV episode, which is not a live episode, but a regular documentary episode, we have Etruscan civilization in works. It is going to be a huge 2 hour long documentary. It will not be me as a narrator. I have managed to get a professional narrator. Shout out to him, Thomas Wicello. Check out his channel. I will put it in the link, put the link in the video description so you can check him out. And it will be 2 hours. It will cover the whole history of the Etruscans from their origins, from their identity as it was debated by the ancients, ancient Greeks, ancient Romans, their records on the Etruscan origin and identity. We'll talk about the Etruscan language, their religion, their customs, and we'll cover their whole history from the mythological beginnings to their domination of the central Italy, they're influenced in southern Italy, they're influenced in the Po River Valley, their clashes with the Greek colonists in the western Mediterranean, in the island of Corsica, in their clashes against the city of Cumae, in southern Italy, in Magna Graecia, clashes with the Syracuse, the Etruscan kings of Rome, the final three kings, Tarquinius the Elder, Servius Tullius, and Tarquinius Superbus, the fall of the Etruscan monarchy in Rome, and then the subsequent conflicts and struggles with the rising Roman Republic and eventual decline and fall at the hands of the Romans. And Josh Garner, is the stream ending soon? Well, yes, I don't think that we will be on for much longer. It's 9 p.m. right here on the East Coast, and it's way past midnight in Europe. So um, when it comes to the topic of the day, it is a very casual topic. It is there's Atreus Anax. Um, it is shout out to professional amateur. And I did not expect this. Are you in Greece right now, or no? If you are, that would be quite an accomplishment. And yes, that's with a digama, 1x. So we do know that there's a 1x and nx is the same title. We do know that the letter digama, as it prominently existed, it was prominently used in the Mycenaean Greek in the late Bronze Age. Throughout the Greek Dark Ages, digama disappeared in several of the classical Greek, what would become classical Greek dialects. I don't think that we have digama in Ionian, Dorian, and Aeolian. The only Greek dialect that kept digama by the time of the classical period was the Arcado-Cypriot Greek, which is a dialect spoken in the mountainous region of Arcadia in Peloponnese and the island of Cyprus. Josh Garner. Okay, thank you for your time. It's a super fascinating topic. I felt that I had to do a live episode, even if it is basically late night, and even if not a lot of people will be online to watch it live. I think my original plan was to do the Mycenaean Hittite Wars, Mycenaean Hittite conflicts, a huge episode, by the way. It will be over 2 hours. But unfortunately, I was not able to complete the preparation for it and all the segments and do all the research and get the sources right until 7, 8 p.m. And it wouldn't serve the episode right if I did a live at 8 p.m. Eastern time after midnight Europe, and it would be a disservice to the episode. So I decided to do a light casual episode on an obscure topic from late Bronze Age, and perhaps this is something that we could do in the future as well. Perhaps we could, here or there we could do these late evening episodes where we talk about some more obscure topics which are up to the speculation in a casual manner. Hal Porter says, I've seen some thought among the scholars that Wanax referred to a king or senior figure who had assumed more religious significance as a leader with Lavagetas. Oh, with Lavagetas being more in operating command in times of war and perhaps having other administrative duties. Yeah, I've seen those hypotheses as well. It's possible. There's no question that Wanax was he was the king in the Mycenaean society. Now the question is who Lavagetas was. We know that he's number two. We know that he owns land and estates third of a size of a Wanax, suggesting that he's a member of a royal family, or perhaps some other person who is second in command, perhaps a crown prince or somebody on that level. It is there's no question that Lavagetas is very highly ranked in the Mycenaean society. Very possible that he was a commander of the army, perhaps in the absence of Wanax. Josh said, Northern Africa and Southwest Europe connections is a topic I don't hear much about. Well, if you give me a context, then we then perhaps we can devise a topic from it. Which time period, which peoples, which kingdoms are we talking about? Are we talking about trade and so on? Professional amateur, first live stream I've caught from you. Hopefully there will be many more. Well, yes, welcome to the live stream. This is actually the third or fourth stream that we have done. The first was a Q&A, which was just a casual Q&A episode. The second one were the historical and mythological kings of Troy. The first big one, actually, the first official stream that we did, the kings of Troy. The second one was the history of the Minoan civilization, and this is the third one, technically the fourth one, but we could call it a third public live stream. Let's call it like that. It says Anasa was also used for feminine chiefs, warlord leaders. I'm not sure about warlords, but yes, Anasa or Wanasa is a feminine version of Wanax, the king. So that would have been the queen, similar to Basilisa or Basileus. All right, so very nice. I'll go back and bring those streams. Well, thank you. Well, especially I would if you are looking for a stream to watch, I would suggest the history of the Minoan civilization because we've done through the whole history starting from the Neolithic period. So we went from the 8th millennium BC. We talked about the Neolithic Crete, the slow and gradual development of Knossos, the the hut settlements, small communities from 25 to 50 people all the way to the start of the Minoan civilization in the late 4th millennium BC, the pre-Palatial period, the Old Palace period, New Palace period, the earthquake, the expansion to the Aegean, Cyclades or Cyclades, the Minoan colony at Miletus, Akrotiri, Theora eruption, and then decline and fall at the hands of the Mycenaeans. And we also talked about the Mycenaean Crete as well in the late Bronze Age from 1450 all the way to the Bronze Age collapse and the Eteocretans. That was the final segment of the topic. So please check it out. It was 2 hours long. It's a very nice episode. Fascinating reading the Linear B records, mostly notes by accountants, tax collections, and the like. Well, written on papyrus or other implement material. Yes, well, unfortunately, that's all that Linear B appears to have been used for: administrative records, tax collection, sacrifices, listings of goods, of other stuff. When it comes to the palatial centers, it does not provide any narrative, it does not provide any political remarks, and it doesn't depict any events, unfortunately. We do have Hittite records of the letters of correspondence between the Hittites. We do have that, and we will talk about that in the next episode, the Hittite-Mycenaean conflicts. We will talk about that. There was an Enkhelyawon letter sent by the king of Enkhyawon, as the Hittites call it, the Achaean or the Mycenaean king, sent to his Hittite counterpart, to the king of the Hittites. There was a dispute about the islands of the Anatolian coast. I think Achilles, the chariot maker, or some sort, was referred to in one case. Fascinating, but also frustrating because they are so fragmentary. Yes, I do remember that. It appears that Achilles was a common name or a frequent name in the Mycenaean Greece. So I have seen that. Yes. Santiago says Linear A is supposed to be like administrative record also, right? You think Minoans could have something similar like Wanax? Probably yes. Probably yes. I do believe that Linear A is more than likely the same thing as Linear B, just different language. So palatial records, administrative stuff, listings, sacrifices, tax collections, and so on. I do believe that the Minoans also had a palatial system for which the Linear A was developed for, and the Mycenaeans, having a palatial system of their own, adopted that upon the conquest of Crete. So Linear A is more than likely script used for the exact same purpose as the Linear B. Hiram Hamelk did a video about the Hittite inscription describing a Trojan conflict slash disagreement. Well, when it comes to the Trojan War, we do know that there have been one or at least one, but likely several conflicts regarding historical Troy or Vilusa as it was called by the Hittites. And please note that the name Vilusa was likely not the original name of the city itself. The Greek version of the time was Vilion, which eventually evolved to Ilion by Homer's time. In the Mycenaean Greece, it is hypothesized to have been Wilion with the gamma letter at the beginning, and and there have been several conflicts regarding the city as they appear in the Hittite scripts on the Hittite tablets. We do know that in the early 13th century BC there was a conflict involving Vilusa, as it was recorded on the Tavagalava letter sent by the Hittite king to the Enkhelyawon king. The Hittites and the Mycenaeans had been in conflict regarding Vilusa at that time. Josh, does anyone know when the first mention of pirates exist in the Near East Mediterranean culture? Well, pirates in which context? Pirates as unsanctioned bandits roaming around with ships? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. That's a good question. Perhaps I could do a little research on it. I'm not an expert on the Near Eastern civilizations, so I'm pretty sure that Egyptians or somebody would have recorded the Bronze Age equivalent of pirates at some point. If nothing, sea peoples were more or less pirates, especially some of the groups were definitely could be considered pirates. Yeah, seizing goods. Well, any raid, for example, Atarsia's raid on Cyprus was likely it involved seizing goods. So, but that's most likely not the earliest mention of such activity. So I'm pretty sure the earliest such mention would come from either Egypt or Mesopotamia or Levant. Another YouTube channel says been to Cyprus and Malta. That's nice. We have done an episode last year on Bronze Age Cyprus, the Kingdom of Alasia. It's about half an hour. If you would like, check it up. Check it out. It's a very nice episode. Let me check this word by professional amateur. Oh, this is a bandit, a person who plunders, a bandit, a pirate. Okay, I did not know that. All right, so we have been live technically for almost an hour. I believe in a few minutes we're going to wrap it up. It's 9:30 here. So once again, going back to the topic, Josh says, Glenn, I agree. It's a victim of perfect location to live and what people want to destroy. Oh, talking about Troy. Well, that's correct. It's in a commercially important location between the Aegean and the Black Sea, between connecting Mediterranean with the Black Sea, and there's a reason they had those high walls, almost impregnable until the Trojan War, right? Paul Porter, thank you. Best listing of the offices of state that I've seen. I get very confused. I'm blocking. Well, we don't have much, unfortunately, when it comes to these ranks. Let's put them. Let's eliminate this and let's put this here so everybody can see. Um, so once again, the Mycenaean offices or ranks, as recorded in Linear B records, we have Wanax, who is the king, whether we had only one Wanax in all of the Mycenaean Greece, reigning from Mycenae over minor kings around the Mycenaean Greece, or each palatial center had its own Wanax. We do not know that, but in each case, Wanax is the number one person in the society in general. So Wanax is the king, Lavagetas is the second in command, so-called leader of the people, or a military commander, or a crown prince, or otherwise a royal family member. Either way, very important, right underneath Wanax, he owned land assigned to him with a size of 1/3 of the land assigned to Wanax, and he also had a sacred land dedicated to him, same as Wanax. Only two individuals with that had that in Mycenaean Greece were Wanax and Lavagetas. He had a smaller temenus than Wanax, but he still had it nevertheless. So unquestionably, number two person in the society. We have Basileus, possibly just a leader or a chieftain originally. We do know that at some point in time, this definitely came to designate a minor king or a local king or a local prince. And by the time of the Mycenaean collapse and the Greek Dark Ages, Basileus came to designate the local king, which local gets removed in the Dark Ages because everything is fragmented, and by the time the Dark Ages are gone, 800 BC, Basileus means king. We also have Equites or Hequetas, the royal companions or the Mycenaean aristocracy, many of them likely members of the royal family or the aristocratic clans close to Wanax, elite of the Mycenaean society, perhaps many of the charioteers, many of the owners of chariots were among Equites and so on. Then we have provincial or regional offices. We have Corete or Coretes, meaning a regional governor, governor of a district. We have a Porocorete or Procoretes, regional deputy. We have a Telestas or Tereta as it is written in the Linear B. So Telestas or Telestai were the landowners, most likely. The alternative hypothesis is related to the religious roles, religious offices, but nevertheless the telestai were considered to be landowners or at least to have owned great estates. Whether or not they were members of the aristocracy in a sense that they were royal companions to the king is not known. Either way, they were wealthy, uh, a wealthy group in the Mycenaean society. Then we have Damokoros, the community leader. Those each region had small communities, probably on the level of villages or small towns, and the leaders were Damokoroi. So Damokoros is a local leader, and means people. So so each community had its own Damokoros who was underneath uh, Koretes and Prokoretes. And we have Karaviporos, which is a key bearer. Al Porter, thanks to all for tolerance of my typing and Greek spellings. Well, with that being said, I think that we are slowly concluding this episode when it comes to Enkhelyawon. This individual was mentioned in the 13th century BC on a tablet from Pylos, one of the chief palace centers of the Mycenaean Greece in the late Bronze Age, and he is not mentioned by title, strictly by name, unlikely to have been Wanax, maybe unlikely to have been Lavagetas either, whether he was a regional a Coretes or a Basileus or otherwise a wealthy individual, member of the Equite, a member of the Teleste. We do not know that, but in my opinion, unlikely to have been Wanax. In each case, he owned great estates, good farmland, 1,000 grape vines, 1,000 fig trees, and had 40 men serving as rowers in the fleet. And Glen Lake, we will save that to another for one of the next episodes. Hal Porter will go back to explore the Minoans. Yes, well, that was the last live episode that we had, the previous one, the history of the Minoan civilization. Please check it out. And please stay tuned. Soon we will air the Hittite Mycenaean conflicts in the late Bronze Age. Once again, I will put the contents right here. It's going to be a huge episode, 2 hours at least. We have background on each of the respective powers, Mycenaean conquest of the Minoan Crete, Hittite expansion to western Anatolia. We have the first battles between the Mycenaeans and the Hittites, General Kisnapili of the Hittites against Atarsia of Achaia on the Mycenaean side. We have weakening of the Hittite state. We have resurrection of the Hittites under Shuppiluliuma I. We have expansion westwards once again, fall of Arzawa. We have territorial disputes between the Hittites and the Achaeans. We have a conflict over the city of Wilusa. We have Alexander Treaty between the king of Wilusa and the king of the Hittites. We have Piamaradu, legendary Piamaradu, the ultimate warlord of Western Anatolia. He deserves an episode on his own, which we will do at some point. So we have Piamaradu and his wars and battles and conflicts with the Hittites. We have the Milawata ladder, correspondence between the Hittite king and the vassal ruler in Western Anatolia, where we see that the Mycenaeans are no longer present in Miletus. They are out of Western Anatolia, they are weakened, and the Hittites are weakened as well, which leads to the Trojan War. not necessarily known from the Hittite sources, but we will talk about the Trojan War nevertheless, and the possible mentions of the Hittites, the Keteioi, the hypothesis and theories on the Hittites, not a definite mention that has to be noted as well. And we have Bronze Age collapse, the fall of Hattusa at the hands of the Sea Peoples, the mysterious downfall of the Mycenaean Greece as well. And with that being said, stay tuned for the next episode, and we'll see you soon.